on the sea alone, staring at the full moon like a lover.
Welcome back, 9:13 on this 28th day of April in downtown Alton. Mark Pierce, Jack Twesten, did I get it right? Did I? Hell froze over. I like to wing things. I don't like to come in, all prepared, and then you start getting a hunchback like Larry King in 2 years. Oh, no, we don't have that time.
But not like Jerry Springer.
Oh, yeah, no.
Too soon.
That's not a good way to start.
Too soon.
We're coming out strong. Get ready for the rest of this conversation. But, I'm a big smut guy on television. I love that stuff. I don't know why. But Jerry Springer was like my icon, and now I'm just, a part of me is missing. But that's why we have Mark and Jack in here to talk about when the stars came out, get me to, stop thinking about things. This is a great book, and so many of us, and I'm sure our listeners are going, wow, I get to relive a little bit of the glory days again with this book. Take us through this, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
So the MRF, I think a lot of people know, it was a summer concert series held from 1969 to 1980 on the campus of SIU-Edwardsville. It was sort of co-sponsored by the St. Louis Symphony for the first 5-6 years. And it was just a huge event. I mean, all the biggest stars, The Who, the Eagles, Janis Joplin, it goes on and on, Grateful Dead, they all played there. But it was a lot more than just rock and roll. It was jazz, it was folk, it was big band, it was comedy, Bob Hope, Richard Pryor. And it's just such a huge piece of nostalgia in this area's history. People who went to it, worked on it, it really still means a whole lot to them. So I've always had this idea in the back of my head to write a book about it because there'd never been a book that told the story. There was a photo book that came out 17, 18 years ago, which was great, but nobody told the stories behind it. I mean, the stories are amazing of people who were students and ended up drinking a beer with Charlie Daniels.
Right.
Or doing other things we won't get into here, but it's in the book with Marshall Tucker Band, and stories like that just fascinated me. So my uncle was a student in the early years of the festival, and he used to tell me stories that really fascinated me. So I always had this idea. I was a journalism major at SIU. I'm a writer. I love to write, and I thought, this is a story that I would love to tell someday. So long story short, I do some research, and I start to dig, and early last year I decided I'm going to try to do this. And everybody said there's a guy named Lyle Ward. He was an administrator at SIUE for a long, long time, and he ran the festival. He's the guy you've got to talk to. So I reach out to Lyle. Lyle says, well, did you know somebody's making a movie? I said, oh, no, somebody stole my thunder, right?
Right.
So I start thinking, I'm like, I worked with a guy, video guy, I work at Purina, and he'd done some work for us, a guy named Jack Twesten. So I emailed Jack. He immediately calls me. He says, it's me. I'm doing the movie. He's doing a documentary. So
the stars aligned.
The stars came out in a line. So Jack and I had lunch, and that was really when it all became where he had elements he could share. I had some things that I could help him with.
Yeah.
And for the rest of last year, the three of us, Lyle, Jack, and myself, spent a lot of time together and put together the book.
Talk about a perfect collaboration.
Yeah, it really was. And Lyle had told me years past, Lyle was my old boss at the Meridian Ballroom when I worked
cool.
there, and also as a student worker at SIU. So he had told me that we had done an interview with him years earlier for the documentary, and that he got approached very often for people who wanted to write a book. He'd been trying to write his memoirs, but life goes on, and just like with my documentary, paying jobs get in the way. Thank God for that. So when Mark called and said, yeah, do you know Lyle? And I said, yeah, he's my old boss. And I called Lyle and said, Mark might be a good guy to help you finish your memoirs, so to speak. So got the two of them together. We met at Stagger Inn for lunch and introduced the two of them, and they hit it off. And
Jack gave me that stamp of approval. He was the bridge. I mean, because you really can't tell this story, I don't think, properly unless you get Lyle. He was there for most of the run until SIU handed off management in 1978 to Niederlander, and he knows all the stories. He was behind the scenes for everything, and as Jack said, there were other people over the years that kind of approached him, and he was like, didn't feel right.
Right.
And fortunately, through Jack, he built that bridge at Stagger that day, and Lyle pitched in, and I think he's happy with the result, and I think we're all happy.
I mean, to me, it's like almost this book had to be done. These projects had to be completed because you can't tell me those paths align better than what just, how this developed. That is so great.
Yeah.
And now what was the most challenging part of getting all this together? Because to me, just, looking at this from an outsider's perspective, there's almost too much to talk about.
That's exactly right. That's what I was going to say. It's almost an embarrassment of riches. As I started doing interviews, I would get amazing stories from people and recollections and thoughts and quotes about the MRF and what it still means to people today. The challenge for me is to finally say, okay, it's done, because for every one great interview, there's 500 out there.
Right.
And it's hard to dig them up. Sometimes I would get a lead on somebody and I would reach out to them and they would show interest, and then it would they'd stop communicating. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to get them. Unfortunately, it's because it took so long to get the book out, a lot of people have passed, and so their stories are not going to be told. So that for me was the challenge, was, okay, do I have enough? Is this tell the story properly? But it could be a situation where I could work on this for 20 years and just keep adding to it, right? So much so that people have said, hey, there could be a second book here. There could be a second book of stories. So
volume 2 through 9.
2 through 9.
Good answer. I like that one.
You're really buying up my time for the next few years.
If you want to talk to Mark, give him 10 years and he'll get back to you. We got to write 9 volumes.
That's right.
Well, and time really is the biggest challenge with a lot of the artist interviews that we do have in the book, and some of those are from folks who have passed that played there. Thank God we got their interviews. But even the time window to get those interviews is tight, because you're trying to catch people on a sound check at a venue. If you can even get a treatment or something in front of them to say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this, it's got to go through layers generally.
How many years have you tried to get Jackson Browne?
A lot of years.
Well, and that's a good point, because, I don't think people realize how hard it is to coordinate all of this. I mean, this isn't just, let's sit down, have a few beers, and talk about our experience. I mean, you guys are getting these details from, the firsthand, performers there. Getting through publicists and PR firms is a nightmare some days. And I mean, did you guys find a formula where you're able to start firing these off, or was it just kind of, we'll see what happens?
It's who do I know that might know somebody that can put our name in there for some credibility, maybe, and a lot of this started with my friend Soup Granda from the Ozark Mountain Daredevils. He's connected. He lives in Nashville. He was one of the first interviews I did. And it snowballs from there when you can get it.
Yeah, and I thank God for Jack for having these recorded interviews that he had collected over the years for his project, because I did reach out to publicists for many of the artists who played there. Some of the really big ones and some of the lesser known ones. I got a couple of nibbles, but I think the fact that I was unproven, they didn't know me, I had nothing I could show them. I didn't have much luck, let's put it that way. So Jack came through on that end.
I've found through working on other documentaries as well, if you can actually get to the person you want to talk to and get through the layers, generally you're going to have success. Work on a documentary on Danny Gatton, who was a great guitar player. You've probably never heard
I don't know who it is. Sounds good.
But Eric Clapton looked up to this guy. And you read stories on blogs and things, and I just reached out to a couple people through an email thinking it would go through the layers, and the next day I get an email back from John Sebastian, who played at the River Festival.
Love and Spoonful.
He wrote Nashville Cats about Danny Gatton. So
just fun story. The first radio bet I ever had to play was Ozark Mountain Daredevils for my veterans radio show I was doing in St. Louis.
Really?
I swear. Yeah, I can't remember.
You just saw Soup not that long ago.
But Terry Hall
last week. In Nashville.
Terry Hall was the host. He had a list of songs. He goes, and a lot of them were generated from bands that played at the MRF. I swear. And so I still have a sheet somewhere, and he goes, Ozark Mountain Daredevils, don't mess this up. And I've never been more scared in my life, and I butchered it. Just absolutely butchered the bed. I wanted to ask you, Jack, did you have an opportunity to be there in person for some of these shows?
2 or 3 nights a week as a youth. This was in my backyard. My dad still lives within probably 2 miles as a crow flies. So
Wow. Now, what was your favorite performance? Was there a hands down bet? It's a tough question and one of those gotcha ones, but
Well,
I mean, to me.
I can tell you what he was doing the night of the biggest show.
Uh-oh.
that's in the book, I guess.
Yeah, it is. The night the Who played, 1971, 32,000 fans, biggest show at the MRF. What were you, 13?
Yeah, about that.
He was cutting the grass, but he could hear it.
I could hear Pete Townsend's guitar from my dad's front yard when I stopped to refill the lawnmower with gasoline.
Yeah.
My sister had gone and left earlier, and I thought, I got to cut the grass.
That's incredible. I mean, just to say that you could hear that guitar playing from
In Edwardsville.
In Edwardsville, cutting your
Glen
grass.
Carbon, officially.
Oh yeah, officially.
It's all the same.
You know, it's amazing to me that we had. I mean, just from my generation, we have no clue that Janis Joplin, Bob Dylan,
Right.
the Eagles, which I think are just amazing. I got into an argument the other day. Somebody goes, "Oh, the Eagles are a terrible band." I told him, I said, "Get out. I don't want to talk
They
to you."
must be Big Lebowski fans.
I love that movie. So with that being said, from the Grateful Dead, which artist generated the most, stories, generated the most, events behind the scenes, during these performances?
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, starting the first year, the buzz around the band, and I was a big fan of the band. And fortunately, we didn't even live here then in '69. But when Bob Dylan was rumored to be showing up and did show up, that was a pretty big deal. Charlie Cox, who stories about him in the book, had been tasked. He was the campus photographer, and he was tasked with getting a picture for Newsweek magazine. And and after he got the shot, when Dylan did finally come out, an aide took it to the airport and flew it to New York. And I'm still looking for that cover of that magazine.
Yeah, we can't find the cover, but it did run.
How incredible
Those
is that?
would be the two for me, would be the Who. There's a big chapter on the Who because there were so many things going on that night, not just because it was the Who, but because of the preparation for it, because they knew it was going to be something bigger than they'd seen before. And all the student workers who were on hand that night to make sure everything ran okay and got everybody off campus by about 3 a.m. They're finally getting everybody off. The other one would be the night Bob Dylan showed up, and that was unannounced. He had not played live in like 3 years after a motorcycle accident. So the band, who had been his backup band a few years before, they're playing a concert, and there's stories in the book about how officials at SIU kind of earlier in the day, somebody got called out to the Holiday Inn in Edwardsville, which there's a chapter on the Holiday Inn because that was
the place,
ground zero for all the
it was
festivities.
the only hotel in the area.
It was. And they there's Bob Dylan, and they say, hey, if conditions are right, Bob's coming out tonight to play the encore. And so people start seeing him, but they're like, hey, guy over there looks just like Bob Dylan. Somebody said, what the hell would Bob Dylan be doing in Edwardsville? Well, it was Bob Dylan, and he came up and played 3 songs at the end. So those were the two big ones for me.
And to put it in perspective for the Who show, this was July of '71. Who's Next had just been released.
2 days
so
before,
now an
the biggest
iconic album for your younger audience.
Yep.
For us, it was a brand new album, and we were looking forward to, we'd been listening to it on the radio already.
Yep.
That's incredible. To me, what I think is just really remarkable is the fact that, you just hit on it with these students, helping out and being part of these events. I mean, sending off things to Newsweek. I mean, just the opportunities that were there. That's just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely mind-blowing. So with that being said, we've been talking, but I got to talk to you guys a little bit more. When you're going through and doing your research, I mean, does the nostalgia just hit you every time? Like when you're looking back going, holy shit, this is crazy.
You go first because you were there, and then
Yeah.
I'll talk
Well,
about
you
from
know,
the perspective of not being
Yeah.
It's interesting in talking to some of our friends that we grew up with, and again, it was our backyard. So like every spring, we'd look to see who was coming to the River Festival that summer. We took it for granted almost. We thought it would always be there, and like I said, 2 or 3 nights a week for a $2 or $3 lawn seat. You asked about what shows were special for me. One, generally we sat on what we called the Edwardsville side. So if you walked in the festival and went to the right, you could find somebody that you knew sitting on a blanket, and we just congregated there. But only very few times did I buck up and spend $5 or $7 for a tent seat. And one of those was Loggins and Messina's last show together. So I got 5th row tickets for Loggins and Messina.
Wow.
Otherwise, I was on the lawn all the time.
Right.
That's incredible.
Yeah, my uncle who went all the time, he said the only time I ever sat under the tent was the day I graduated. because they did graduations out there. It was sort of like if you were a student, you were going to be on the lawn. That was the place to be. But yeah, for me, I was 12 when it ended. I never got a chance to go, and I sort of described it as being sort of a channel for the people like Jack and Lyle and the people who were there to kind of tell their stories kind of through me in the book. And it's been such an honor to do that because I just wish I could have been there. I love that kind of music, that I always have. And to think about those nights out there, I drove by it on the way here this morning, and I was like, man, it would have been great to be there.
What ended the MRF? Because I don't know much about this. Was there a specific reason?
Well, the MRF really never made any money. It lost money.
It was never really meant to make money.
It was never meant to. It was more of a cultural. The whole idea behind it was the university wanted people from Missouri to come over across the river and see this new university. The St. Louis Symphony wanted to get more weeks of work for their musicians in their contract, so they created this joint summer series with the symphony. But then they added in all the popular events, too.
Right.
That was a trend that was going on in 1969. It turned a very, very slight profit 2 years. It lost a lot of money the rest of the years. And by about the mid-'70s, the symphony bowed out, said we can't keep losing money like this. Right. The university soldiered on, but the president of the university, who had been so supportive from the beginning, John Rendleman, unfortunately died young of cancer.
76.
Yeah, he was 48 years old, I believe. Wow. And so after that, the next leadership of the university didn't feel an ownership to it. They looked at the money losses. They turned it over to a promoter out of New York. The last 3 years, the promoter ran it, but you can talk to the locals. It wasn't the same.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
The tent didn't go up. The artists coming in weren't as good and as frequent. It was really a sign of the times, too, I think.
Ticket prices went way up. And then Nederlander and the university just stopped communicating. The expectation was that Nederlander would kind of create a really nice setting and environment and make some upgrades on the area. They didn't, and they stopped talking to the university. And after the 1980 season, the last concert was ZZ Top. In 1980, and then early 81, they said there will not be an 81 season. They never said the MRF was dead. They just said there won't be an 81 season. Wow. Well, then there wasn't an 82, and there wasn't an 83, and it just faded away.
We all kind of knew that we're close to it and worked there or frequented there, that around 77, or it just looked like it was starting to go downhill. One of the things that I think I had heard that Nederlander promised, I don't know if this made the book or if I heard it later, so many conversations, was that Nederlander was also kind of promising to bring in some Broadway shows. Did you have that from
wow. They talked one year about having, it was over 100 events. They said they were going to bring in, because Nederlander, and they still do, I believe, they run Broadway shows, they run all kinds of theatrical things, and they talked about having an event every night. Well, that year, obviously, it didn't happen. They talked big at the start, and then by the end, they just stopped talking altogether, and it got really, really strange. As you do the research on it, it's like, that's weird. I mean, they weren't returning calls, and the university's like, you said you were going to do this, and it got really, really ugly. And so by then, a couple of leaders down the road from Rendleman, they just said,
it's time.
Pull the plug.
Yeah.
Even with all that, though, I think history looks at it as a success. It did what it set out to be, which was an awareness of the new campus. It turned me and a lot of people on to new music, too. I mean, you talk about the Who and the Eagles and the big shows, but I saw a lot of up-and-comers who were, new artists, emerging artists that just come out with their first records and things like that.
And there are people in the book who talk about how they were students who worked out there. They didn't know anything about classical music. Now they have season tickets to the St. Louis Symphony. They didn't know anything about jazz. Now, Rick Hayden is a great jazz guitarist and teacher. So it turned them on to new things. They came out for the Who and the Eagles and all that, but they stayed for the other groups, and it really broadened their horizon.
Or some nights you just go because what
Gordon
else is
Lightfoot.
going on? Yeah, I have the Gordon Lightfoot story. I wasn't really a big fan of his. I appreciated his talent as a songwriter and singer.
Love Grows doesn't do it for you?
Well, with the big hit at the time, I think it was Sundown, which
okay,
just got played a lot. It was a great song. But I went just because it was a $2-3 lawn seat, and I'm glad I went to this day because it was a great show, and I appreciate it now that I have a mind that can appreciate those kind of things. But at the time, I was like, that's another show. just go sit on the blanket and take it in.
I mean, for my generation, I don't think we realize the power of the MRF, because it's like you have these. That would be like having Lewis and Clark set up a venue, and then all of a sudden, Post Malone and all these new guys are coming out. And
Yes.
It's insane to me.
I mean, and that's why you can't do it today.
You can't.
We
no.
talk at the end of the book. We asked a bunch of people, could you bring it back? Could you do it now? And everybody was like, no, there's no way you can do it now. It was a moment in time, and I think everybody really just appreciates it for the experience that it gave them. And it's still today. I mean, I knew this was going to be a real hot button topic, because we did a talk a few weeks ago in Edwardsville, and they had just this overflow crowd. People were standing in the next room listening, and then they would come up and get a book, and we'd sign it, and they would just tell, I was there this night. My friend and I went this night. My dad took us to see the Osmonds. And people love to tell those stories and relive it, and you can see in their eyes how much it means.
It's priceless.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's worth any cost of the book, is just hearing those stories too. And I got to ask you, Jack, with you being there, was there one that you thought, wow, what a dud?
Ooh, good question.
Not really. I mean,
wow.
Everything I went to, I enjoyed. There was a night I was working as a student worker at the back of the tent, and your job that night was to keep people from rushing the tent. I don't remember what show it was. Mm-hmm. The dud I felt was a full beer can, when they still had a steel rim on the bottom, hit me in the back of the head. No, I had a hat on, thank God, or it would have probably cut.
There were
cut
some
my
wild
elbow.
nights out there.
So that was a dud, but other than that, it was all good.
Yeah, I Cantina was a wild night. The Marshall Tucker Band always brought a rowdy crowd.
War
was that was a bad night. Yeah, I mean, stuff happened, but you're going to get that many people drinking beer out on the lawn. I mean, there's going to be some things.
You guys are saying names that my mind seriously is still not wrapping my head around this.
Oh, we haven't even started. The Doobie Brothers Heart.
But your equation
goes
with doing something up here in Post Malone and all that.
Yeah.
See, that's you're exactly right, because I don't know the new artists, but at that time I did know a lot of them.
Right.
One of the
You
other
get
things
bigger
that's
than
in
the
the
Who.
book that Lyle did was there was a group of students who were kind of an advisory board to him, because Lyle was young. I mean, he had just graduated in 68?
68, 9.
And as almost a student himself, became the concert manager. But he self-proclaimed, as he told us, and he's told me for years, wasn't that big of a music guy for contemporary stuff. So he relied on the students to advise.
Tell him, hey, see if you can get these people. And it's funny because one of them said, we would put people on there we knew we couldn't get, like the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
Just why not? Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Although they all played there, but not together.
Gotcha.
They would put the solo Beatles. Why not? We can ask.
Throw it at the wall. If it sticks, great.
Yeah.
Well, it's just incredible, and I really mean that. What was it for you, Mark? Whenever you're writing this, you have 30 years of experience in journalism, or you graduated with journalism. How does your writing style change when you're doing something like this? Because I'm sure it's difficult to try to take people back to each story and really take them there.
Well, it was a challenge because I'd never done anything like this.
Right.
I'm not a big fiction writer. I'm not a creative writer. I work corporate. I was a sports writer at the Telegraph, and I covered your dad. We'll talk about that later. No.
Off the record.
But no, I hadn't done a whole lot of creative writing. I'd been doing a lot of corporate writing for many, many years. But I don't know. There was just something about this topic that was easy. It just kind of came easily because of the love of music that I have and the familiarity I have with the campus and the university and some of the people involved. And it just kind of came together. And I talk about, they say, you're going to write another book. And it's like, I would love to write another book, but it's got to be as much fun as this was, because if it's not, it's going to feel like work.
Exactly.
This was fun, start to finish.
I
had
couldn't
a
even
blast.
imagine.
Well, and if I can toot his horn a little bit, his attention to detail and research, I guess maybe there's a common thhead between doing corporate work, because you have to research and fact find and all those kind of things. But the digging he did, but you maybe want to talk about your
the newspaper
Telegraph.
Yeah, well, I mean, I worked at the Telegraph in the 90s as a sports writer. So, but no, it's funny. They have these websites where you can find old issues of newspapers. So I thought, well, okay, that's going to give me the foundation for this story. What happened start to finish? So I started going back and pulling all the clippings I could find from the MRF. And when I got done, I had over 2,000 newspaper clippings. And I still have them. And so I had to go through all of those chronologically, and that kind of told the story of the board meetings and, are they going to get funding from this state, commission to make it happen. And there were so many years when it just didn't look like the MRF was even going to happen. And that's one of the great stories. This is almost like a little engine that could sort of thing. It was like, we don't have a big budget. We're going to try to put this off. And I don't know if we're going to be able to do it. We lost $80,000 last year. But hey, we just got a $50,000 grant from the state. Let's do it again. And they just kept doing it. And for 12 years, they were able to do it. And
well, really, the first year, I think Lyle was quoted as saying, or told me, but from the time that it was actually a go was like, what, November of 68?
68, yeah.
So, I mean, this whole thing was kind of put together really quickly.
Last minute, yeah.
Something
and then they
big.
launched in June of 69. So they didn't have a site. They didn't have any idea of what they were going to do. And so they had, 8 months to pull it off. And before you know it, 11 days after the first symphony concert, Janis Joplin plays. So it's like, boom, they didn't waste any time. They got right to it.
And then before Woodstock even happened later that year in August, we had Richie Havens there.
Oh, my God.
Arlo Guthrie.
Ian and Sylvia.
Joan Baez. There were 6 artists that played Woodstock. They played the MRF that summer before Woodstock. 6 of them.
You can't even,
I know.
I can't comprehend that. I really can't. And another thing that I think is just fascinating is, we're speaking into these Heil microphones too, and Bob Heil and the
Bob
rock and
Heil.
roll.
These are Heil mics?
Absolutely.
Are
on
they
the
really?
back right
Bob's
there.
a friend of mine.
Oh,
And I've learned so much about his work with the Who and that Heil talk
and
box.
the Dead, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just
the talk box.
the tie-in is just remarkable. That there's so much, not only just history, but just a lot of development too. I mean, it's remarkable.
Well, the soundboard from the MRF is in the Hall of Fame. Rock and Roll Hall
Is
of
it
Fame.
really?
Yeah. There's a picture of it in there. Yeah, it's Bob. The story of Iron Butterfly and Bob Heil in there is one of my favorites. And just how Iron Butterfly came in 1969, Inagata DeVita, look it up. Really, really psychedelic, but super loud. And
Bob Shaw with the symphony had been the tech guy, kind of the sound guy. Wow. And he knew Bob Heil, and he calls him the next morning and says, Heil, these guys came in this Iron Butterfly and blew up my Bozak
they blew out my
speakers."
Bozak.
And that's in the book.
Yes, it is. That's the title of the chapter. And that was it. I mean, he said,
the phone line
I'm out of the rock and roll, man. You work, because by then Bob Heil had worked with the Dead, so he
Joe
knew
Walsh
that.
and the Who.
And he was starting, I think, with the Who around 69, I guess. And he said, I'm out. And so Bob Heil came in and with Ed Drone and built an amazing sound system that you could hear back on the lawn. And they talk about the night the Who came and how for Bob Heil it was so great because he had his system at the MRF and he had his road system with the Who, and they just plugged right in. And the Andy from Wishbone
Andy
Ash,
Powell.
Andy Powell from Wishbone Ash, who opened for the Who that night, said it was like a jet engine taking off. It was like.
Oh, that's
why
incredible.
Jack Burnham cuts the
I could
grass.
hear it from that long.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And guys, I could talk to you all day because this is such a great book. And so many people that are watching this, my text line is literally, we have it on the computer and I have a cloud on my phone and just ding, 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 ding. But I can't ask you those questions. Some of them are very inappropriate.
There were things that did not make the book.
Exactly.
Don't you have a 7-second delay button?
Not in this one. Well, the FCC doesn't chaperone us on this one, so I just let it fly. What the hell,
Any questions that you can ask that maybe we can talk about? I don't know.
Right now we gotta get go because I have a sponsored segment, so we gotta hit.
It's radio.
We're literally right at time, and I really appreciate. I actually went 10 minutes over.
Can I say where people can get the book?
Oh God, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm going crazy right now.
I will be very quick. You can get it at Vintage Vinyl over on the Loop in St. Louis, Missouri History Museum gift shop. It will be at Afterwards Bookstore in Edwardsville beginning today. And if you can't get to any of those places, go to publishingconceptsllc.com.
And
about your Facebook page that also has information
yeah,
on
there's a-
Pond,
yeah,
because we're doing
yeah.
some more appearances. You're
That's
doing
awesome.
some
Please
things.
do, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a Facebook page. Just look up When the Stars Came Out on Facebook. We're putting all the interviews and the shows we're going to do. We're going to be at the St. Louis Record Show on Sunday. So we're going to be out and about. But if you can't find it anywhere else, go to publishingconceptsllc.com.
Also available at all Skylark Brothers music.
Yeah, if you go
gigs.
see the Skylark Brothers, he sells them there.
Oh, great. Well, and too, guys, we're going to link that store on the on-demand interview and in the article we write, so that way we can take you to it. Guys, I wish I could talk to you
Thank you.
longer. I should have said, you know what, hell with this. We'll just do a whole show
do it
talking
again.
about this. Please do, and best of luck. I hope there's a part 2 coming out, because I'm telling you what, this has just been great. Mark Pierce, Jack Twesten, thank you
got
so
it.
much for your time.
Thank you, CJ.
At 9:43, we'll take a quick break. We got to come back because we're talking to Jimmy Holmes. He is going to be at the Illinois Elvis Convention up at the
Music
Gateway
Day.
Convention Center. I'm telling you what. now-
Elvis did not play the MRF.
no, I was gonna ask. I'm like,
did not.
by the time '69, so that's right before he became Fat Elvis. Whatever. But Jimmy Holmes is just remarkable. Travels the globe. He's gonna be in Santiago, Chile, and Australia in just a couple of weeks. 24 years old, but he joins us on Zoom to talk about his appearance coming up this weekend.